The balance of power, which had taken her half a lifetime to tilt in her favor, was now slipping from her grasp, leaning toward the young heir at an irreversible speed. The days that followed were for Camilla a protracted blur of helplessness as she watched Prince William's engine of power operate with ruthless averted eyes. Isolation was closing in on her like an invisible net. Standing before the vanity in her bedroom, gazing at her reflection in the large mirror, Camilla felt a surge of genuine fear and unerring precision. The decisions to tighten the royal boundaries were no longer mere warnings on paper. They had materialized into concrete actions in every corner of the palace. The Parker Bowles family had now officially lost their final structural ties through the closed meeting rooms of Buckingham Palace. They saw in William the necessary alertness and decisiveness of a future sovereign, while Queen Camilla's image was gradually tarnished by the sheer scale of her personal ambitions. The shift in the balance of power took place spectacularly, yet silently. Several powerful figures, who had once kept a safe distance from rejections or indefinite delays from administrative officials. Camilla felt this freezing atmosphere more acutely than anyone. Whenever she walked through the corridors, the greetings from courtiers remained respectful, but seemed devoid of warmth, replaced instead by hurried bows, and from both factions began to make moves indicating they were leaning toward the Prince of Wales. At Privy Council, meetings, nods of respect and consensus for William's proposals became increasingly frequent. Conversely, requests or recommendations originating from Camilla's office began to meet with polite, cold bureaucratic formality. No one dared risk their own future to side with an isolated queen. She realized she no longer held any cards. Every escape route had been blocked by her stepson's methodical and decisive maneuvers. Meanwhile, the atmosphere within the monarchy's offices of power, yet her hands adorned with precious diamond rings, trembled slightly, as the truth said in the contacts who had once been loyal now responded with tactful excuses of being busy, or refused to accept this disastrous outcome, her heart filled with resentment and bitterness. She repeatedly flipped through her address books, searching for a name, an old ally within the aristocracy, or a media connection that could help her reverse the tide. Royal life. Within the Royal Estate Management Office, Tom and Laura's rights to use the Crown-owned holiday apartments at Windsor were quietly revoked. Privileges once taken for granted, such as priority transit passes at airports or the accompaniment of royal security personnel on private trips, vanished entirely. Camilla bitterly read the reports sent back by her trusted aides, which described her children having to queue for check-in like ordinary citizens, enduring the scrutinizing stares of the public and the indifference of diplomatic officials, the very people who had once courted their favor. This demotion in her children's status cut deep into the Queen's self-esteem. Unable to sit idly by while her word to freeze William's measures and restore honor and privilege to Tom and Laura. She emphasized that what William was doing was not merely targeting her children, but was a direct insult to the crown she wore upon her head. Yet King Charles III's reaction dealt a fatal blow to Camilla's remaining hope. The king did not look at his wife. His gaze remained fixed on the royal seal, resting on the desk, the symbol of a responsibility heavier than any personal affection. Despite enduring immense psychological pressure from the wife he had always loved and indulged, Charles chose silence. His shoulders trembled slightly beneath his silk robe, but he slowly withdrew his hands from Camilla's grasp. The revelations exposed by Andrew Parker Bowles regarding her factions plotting to manipulate William's Bowles appeared once again. Adopting the posture of a man who had decided to shed all restraints to protect core values, he continued to provide Prince William's camp with shown into a more brutal phase. At an old and discreet aristocratic club in the heart of London, a place where conversations were heard only by leather-bound walls and dim amber lights. Andrew Parker Bowles, as he stood on the precipice between being a husband and being a king. Before King Charles III could find an escape from his internal torment, another undercurrent surged through the palace, pushing the war for the crown. The respectful bows of the courtiers, as William walked through the palace corridors, were no longer just mandatory etiquette, but contained deep admiration and loyalty. The position of the carried an entirely contrasting tone. Support for Prince William within the British royal family and among government officials surged dramatically following his firm decisions. Senior royals and ministers quietly admired the prince's alertness and his absolute loyalty to the purity of the Windsor bloodline. They saw in him the embodiment of a highly capable future leader, a man willing to cast aside complex personal relationships to protect the integrity and sanctity.
Camilla and William have a complicated relationship. According to author Christopher Anderson, he tolerates her. Camilla has always been a little afraid of William.
Prince William has officially moved to curtail the influence of Queen Camilla's private family within the royal inner circle. This decisive move did not happen by chance. It all began after a secret meeting between William and Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla's ex-husband. During this encounter, Andrew reportedly exposed long-buried truths about how Camilla had quietly expanded her reach, pulling her son Tom Parker Bowles' daughter, Laura Lopes, and her entire immediate family deeper into the fold of royal privilege. Consequently, secrets that Camilla had kept hidden for years are now by the office of the Prince of Wales. Her children's names had vanished, entirely replaced by legitimate blood royals and government officials. When she questioned the head of protocol with open displeasure, the official merely bowed, avoiding her gaze, and replied in a respectful but hand gripping the document folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. The raw truth lay bare before her. A systematic campaign to purge her family's influence was being ruthlessly executed without her being informed or consulted in the slightest. The mechanical tone that they were simply following the new standard guidelines on security and succession protocol. At that moment, a chill ran down Camilla's spine. She stood frozen in the palace corridor, her detachment of a man who had just fulfilled his supreme duty. He knew he had closed a turbulent chapter of the internal family politics to open a new era, one where he had firmly consolidated his position as the future heir to the throne had never been so secure and majestic. The covert war for influence within the palace walls finally reached its end with an absolute victory for the legitimate heir. The Parker Bowles family was officially cast out of the monarchy's circle of influence, returning to their rightful place as ordinary citizens outside the palace gates. Standing by a high-floor window, Prince William gazed down at the courtyard in front of the palace where the royal standard flew proudly in the wind. His face showed no trace of triumphant emotion, only the calm, cold, hoping her soft yet firm posture would force the young prince to back down. Yet in response to his stepmother's veiled assault, William maintained an alarmingly cold demeanor. He did not avoid Camilla's gaze. Instead, he looked directly at her, with the unwavering resolve of a man holding the decisional grounds. He inverted the issue by invoking supreme constitutional principles and the duty to protect the integrity and purity of the direct line of succession. To him, any unofficial privilege was a loophole that could jeopardize the credibility of the crown. William's only gesture was to loosely interlock his hands, resting them on the desk. When he spoke, his voice was low, but carried the weight of a non-negotiable command. William refused to argue on emotion. Bowles's candor did not stem from malice, but from the concern of a man who understood the rules of the aristocratic game. Once boundaries blur, instability follows. These confessions instantly ignited a fire of anxiety within William. For a long time, the Prince of Wales had revered a supreme principle: The direct line of succession to the British crown must always remain the sole pure core, its privileges never to be shared with any external family branch. The silent rise and infiltration of the Parker Bowles, Tom and Laura's presence under the guise of being the Queen's family, was a sophisticated maneuver to allow the Parker Bowles family to benefit from her rising status, creating an unofficial yet powerful circle of influence right at the heart of the monarchy. Andrew Parker afternoon, Camilla decided to turn to King Charles III. She appeared at the King's Library in Clarence House, bearing a carefully calculated look of exhaustion and frailty. Sinking into the armchair beside her husband, Camilla deftly channeled the vulnerability of a mother. She rose and left the room with a detached, formal nod. But her heart was filled with resentment and resolve. She knew she needed a greater power base to reverse the situation. Witnessing her children being treated unfairly, cast aside like strangers within their own family. She lamented endlessly, using choked tears. Crown allowed no room for hesitation. These systematic changes quickly produced the first fractures. At subsequent charity events and diplomatic galas, Tom and Laura's absence became glaringly obvious to those with a keen eye. From being regular guests of honor in the front row, close as meticulous as a surgeon's, separating foreign tissue from a living body. He knew he was sparking an internal storm, but his responsibility to protect the sanctity of to their powerful mother, they now found themselves tactfully pushed to the fringes. The special passes that once granted them free access to royal palaces were suddenly declared expired and undergoing regulatory updates. Tom Parker Bowles, accustomed to media attention due to his status as her family was pushed into the abyss of oblivion, Camilla decided to make one final desperate effort. She chose a late-night hour when King Charles III sat alone in his study, surrounded by thick hands tightly gripping his. Camilla invoked every memory of their love, every vow of shared hardships over the past half-century, to beg Charles to issue a decree, a single stacks of state papers, and the dim glow of a desk lamp. Camilla entered no longer bearing the pride of a queen consort, but carrying the urgent, painful anguish of a mother. She knelt beside the king's armchair. Her trembling advisors had completely shattered the king's trust. He understood that if he intervened now to protect his wife's private family, he would personally destroy the integrity of royal law and plunge the monarchy into a severe step back, her eyes wide with shock as she looked at the most powerful man in the kingdom, the man who had once been willing to defy the world to marry her, now choosing to stand with his son. The vast study suddenly grew as cold as an ice vault. Stumbling back to the royal institutional crisis with his legitimate heir, the king's silent but definitive refusal felt like a knife cutting Camilla's final lifeline. She slowly stood up, taking a... What exactly did Andrew Parker Bowles reveal that prompted William to deliver such a devastating final verdict? And how will Camilla strike back as her underground empire within the British monarchy begins to crumble? Prince William, the heir to the British throne, a man who always appeared before the public with a calm and now coming to light. William wasted no time taking action. Invitations were abruptly rescinded. Unofficial privileges were stripped away. Doors that were once wide open to the Parker Bowles family began to slam shut. The tension reached a boiling point when Camilla discovered that her children and grandchildren were being systematically frozen out of the power circle she had painstakingly built. Now Camilla is left furious. William remains cold and resolute, while King Charles III finds himself caught in the crossfire between his powerful wife and the heir to the throne, who always maintained a cold detachment and absolute loyalty to the direct line of succession. William said little. He merely tapped his finger against the bolded names on the tentative guest list, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. His gaze was ice-cold, signaling an irreversible course of royal vehicles, and revoked the exceptional invitations that had once been tacitly approved under the Queen's indulgence. Each of the prince's actions was decisive command. The review of unofficial privileges began quietly but thoroughly within the administrative offices of the palace. William directly ordered the tightening of regulations regarding access to restricted areas, re-examined the logs for the entirely new chapter in the young prince's understanding. Andrew did not hesitate to strip away the varnish from the raw truth about Camilla, the woman with whom he had shared a bed for many years. He spoke of the days before Camilla officially crossed the palace gates, detailing how she had patiently and skillfully woven a tangled web of connections within the British aristocracy. It was no coincidence, but rather a meticulously calculated strategy to expand her personal influence, laying a solid foundation for an palace walls since the coronation of King Charles III. Andrew Parker Bowles stared intently at the swirling steam from his tea, as if weighing every word before stepping into the forbidden territory of the past. When he finally spoke, his low, clear voice opened an intelligibility of the throne. William's resolute gaze and slightly set jaw were the clearest proclamation before the destiny of the monarchy. There was no room for external family branches to intrude. The relationship between the two, which had always been a veneer of politeness, masking mutual disdain, now officially collapsed into a state of extreme tension. Neither side would yield. Camilla could clearly feel the solid fortress William had erected before her, a wall built from cold indifference and immutable laws. The pride of a woman who had weathered enough storms to secure her current position would not allow her to accept such a crushing defeat. Realizing that persuading William herself was entirely impossible, another plan immediately took shape in Camilla's mind. If an invisible hand had struck her family's name from the inner circle. This shrinking of influence occurred so quietly that initially even Camilla did not suspect a thing until a queen's son began to feel the cold shoulder from the protocol staff people who had once bowed to him, but now looked at him with distant bureaucratic eyes. Laura Lopes also noticed that invitations to private aristocratic gatherings suddenly grew scarce, as an unexpected incident took place at the Buckingham Palace administrative office. While preparing for a reception for a foreign delegation, Camilla happened to catch sight of the final seating chart approved in his private office. He turned the pages of a document detailing upcoming royal events for the year. Facing him were his two closest advisors, strategic minds, all royal affairs. There would be no compromises when the crown needed protecting. The action plan was drawn up by Prince William over the following days, carried out without fanfare, but with a crushing invisible pressure. Sitting behind the large mahogany desk, his gaze drifted out the window, where the creeping darkness was swallowing the twilight-drenched royal gardens. A covert confrontation was about to begin. Prince William stood up, smoothing his jacket, having reached a turning point, in a decision he would immediately review the entire role position and unofficial privileges of the Parker Bowles family in Bowles clan. Exposed through the details Andrew had just laid bare, crossed his red line. The fear that the line between the legitimate royal family and his stepmother's private kin was becoming dangerously thin began to gnaw at decisive resolve. As the conversation drew to a close and Andrew Parker Bowles departed, leaving a hauntingly quiet void in the room, William remained motionless in his seat. At William's mind, he envisioned a future where royal privileges were abused and where the standing of his own children, the rightful heirs, was compromised by an undercurrent that did not carry Windsor blood. This insecurity hardened into a cold, shocking information regarding Camilla's behind-the-scenes maneuvers spanning many years. This time, Andrew's documents and accounts went far beyond standard social influence-building delving, instead into calculated campaigns of subversion. He exposed the true reasons why William's closest, highly capable advisors had been repeatedly reassigned or mysteriously entangled in media scandals in the past. It was no bureaucratic coincidence. It was a sophisticated strategy orchestrated by Camilla's faction to weaken, isolate, and restrict the vision of the heir to the throne. Every detail concerning how journalists were approached and how smear campaigns were directed from the shadows of the palace gradually came to light under the cold. He stood up, walking slowly toward the window, his hands clasped behind his back, trembling slightly. King Charles looked out at the empty courtyard, his sigh swallowed by the quiet room, signaling a painful internal conflict. Placed in an agonizingly difficult position, caught in a vice between his deep affection and marital loyalty to the wife who had walked through countless storms by his side, and his supreme respect for the heir to the throne, the man executing strict measures for the future of the House of Windsor, and their decades-long emotional bond to sway the king's heart, hoping he would step forward, use his sovereign authority to reprimand William, and reclaim justice for the Parker Bowles family. King Charles III listened to his wife's pleas, weary lines deeply etched across his brow. The king was realization that Charles's son, the man with whom she had tried to maintain a truce for so many years, dared to bypass her and strike so mercilessly, made her chest heave with rage and humiliation. Walking back to her private quarters, Camilla felt the profound isolation of the space around her. Bitterness and fear began to take root, driving her to find a way to counterattack and protect her children's future before it was too late. The small drawing room hidden deep within Kensington Palace became the stage for a suffocating clash between two of the monarchy's covert forces. Looking at the royal portraits hanging along the corridor, she realized that the shadow of power she had painstakingly built for the Parker Bowles family over 2 decades was shrinking at a dizzying pace under the hand of the young heir. The key Prince William needed to thoroughly complete his plan. Upon the desk at